Okay, thanks for joining today. We're going to run through our P6-Reporter tool. I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm joining you from Calgary, and I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald. And doing the heavy lifting is Marilyn Backstrom, joining us from Edmonton. She's excellent implementation specialist with Emerald and has many years of experience in many industries. So she's going to run through the tool in detail. So let's talk about why we created P6-Reporter. So years ago, we had two tools, our EP Dashboard and EP Data Warehouse. Now, Dashboard was built on Flex technology, which was Adobe product, and that they got into a big war with Apple. So that tool became open source. So instead of building a new dashboard tool on its standalone, we decided, let's put our energy in our data warehouse. Let's put our energy in getting the data out of the warehouse so that people can use this tool, the data into whatever tool they already have corporately. And Marilyn is going to show you that. So that's where we moved it to, because the common struggle everyone has is P6 is mostly for the scheduling team, maybe the project controls team. You don't always deploy it to all the management team. So that's a common struggle people have, is getting that data out. Now, as a result, a lot of our clients don't always use all the aspects of the tool, okay? So I'm going to jump in and ask you a quick question just to get a feel for the audience, and you can answer if you wish. How do you currently do reporting? Okay, so a lot of people pull it out into Excel. Some people we've seen pull data out into Excel and then push it into Power BI, which has its problems. And I think the Access database is old. Probably we don't have so many people doing that anymore. So if you want to go ahead and answer that, that's kind of handy. But kind of what we're seeing in other webinars is it's a bit of the first and a bit of the second. The third is probably getting old, so people aren't doing that quite as much. Okay, I'll share the results. Not too many people wanted to vote, it looks like, but you can go ahead and vote after. We do collect the statistics and we do push them to our website once a year. So you will kind of see the statistics on these polls if you go to our P6-Reporter page and scroll down. So because the data often is just being used by the project controls team, they try not to get it too complicated, okay? But it can be kind of complicated. If you look in the back end of the tables, there's hundreds of tables merging all the data. For us P6 users, we just see it and it looks seamless, but there is a pretty complicated schema in the back end. And it's not always easy to share it with that team. Now, we talked about the Excel into Power BI, etc. Well, the problem with doing extracts of the data is the accuracy. It's easy to make a mistake with filters. It's easy to make a mistake in Excel. So what we find is pulling that data out is not always accurate and it's not always efficient. If you're working on a turnaround and you're trying to get the reports out in less than half an hour between all the updates, you don't have a lot of time to be doing stuff like this. So having something that is more plug and play for you as a user, efficiency is critical. Even with our clients that run capital projects and do weekly updates and even monthly updates, we've found that they've got efficiency problems with getting the updates done. Okay, so having more automation, having snapshots that are reliable is crucial. And we have some clients that were going to the P6 tables directly. Now that is very problematic as well. First of all, it takes a lot of work to get them set up, and you're dealing with live P6 data. And if you're a scheduler, and most of you probably are, you know that you F9 at least probably 10 times a day. So the reports that someone's seeing off live data can be changed even 2 minutes after they've been published. Okay, so it's the idea of going after live data is not a very good game plan. Now we're trying to get all the important information from P6 into the right people's hands so that they can make those business decisions. That's the whole objective. So what we're going to show you, we think, is the most efficient way to do this, and most accurate and very reliable. Okay. Now we also had some clients that were actually exporting XERs, XML files, trying to use those. That is also highly problematic, and not all the data is in an XER. Okay. So there's a lot of reasons why this we feel is the most efficient way, and that's why we're trying to show it to you. Now let's do one other quick question. Let's see if more people will answer. How often do you do your reporting? Okay, so as I mentioned, we've seen clients that are doing daily, weekly, and monthly struggling. So it's not just if you're in a turnaround position. It can be difficult to report no matter how often. Okay, so I'll show the results and we can keep going. Now, let me explain briefly how P6-Reporter works, and then I'll turn it over to Marilyn and she will show you the way that you push P6-Reporter data out of P6 into the data warehouse and then consume it up in a dashboarding tool. And we can show you Power BI as well as Tableau. Okay, now it can be used in any tool that you use corporately. So it's not limited to what we're showing you, but we're going to give you some food for thought. So I mentioned the idea of snapshots. So that's the first thing that we do that I think is hugely important here. So we take snapshots out of P6. Now those can be automated. So if the team is updating once a week, for example, on Friday, perhaps you can automate the snapshot. If you want to do, if the team does them at different times, they do their updates at different times, then you can manually invoke a snapshot. Okay, so you have both options. And the key with a snapshot is we've got the table structures in a way that the data is comprehensive. You're not missing anything. And we've done it in such a way that we make it easier to work with. So it's called denormalizing, which makes it easier to work with, so it's more flexible. Now our snapshots can take a variety of levels of data, including baselines, and because we've got baselines and we've got multiple snapshots, we can do impact analysis and we can compare different updates quite readily and quite easily, quite a bit easier than trying to do it in the back end tables. Now, we rely on our warehouse. So we still have our warehouse. It's just embedded in P6-Reporter, and that's where the snapshots go. Now, as I mentioned, the data is made easier to work with. That's called denormalization of the data. So instead of hundreds of tables, it's a lot fewer, which means it's much easier to get the data that you want and to filter on it effectively, much more easily than trying to do it with the back-end tables. Now, we also capture things that are not in XERs, things like spreads, and spreads are just the time-based data. So if you're using resources, if you're using costs with expenses, these are important things that you will not get easily by trying to go after XERs and backend tables. Now, in terms of the comprehensiveness of what we snapshot all the different layers. So we get portfolio level data, projects and issues. We get task level data with all the activities, UDFs, codes, steps. We get the spreads, so that's the resource assignments and the expenses. And then we get additional data that you might want to report on, particularly if you're doing a schedule analysis. So things like calendars, things like logic, are also snapshotted. And then those go out to the warehouse, and we have pre-built templated data views that pull the data in pretty common ways that people want to see it. So it makes it easier and much quicker to create the reporting in the different software tools that you're already using within your organization. And then the reporting is displayed in that tool, whatever that tool is. And again, today we're going to show you Tableau and Power BI. Now that lets you report and do different comparisons. You can have standard KPIs across your projects. So it really brings your reporting capability to a whole different level, not project-based only, but also corporate-based. So enterprise-based, portfolio-based reporting becomes available now because of this strategy. Okay, so I think I can turn it over to Mary Lynn and give her the ability to start to actually show us the software in action. Okay, go on your way, Mary Lynn.
Okay, you can hear me all right?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so I just need to share my screen and we will have a look at all this.
Okay, perfect. And again, if you have questions as she's going through, put them in the question room and I'll try and tackle them as we go. Between James and I, we can probably tackle them.
Okay, to start off with, Nicole explained that we'll be looking at a couple of different tools. This particular one is Power BI. For anybody who hasn't used it, you might not recognize it. Now, we've got some examples set up. The examples that are set up in this particular report we're looking at are created from drilling files, but don't let that kind of cause any kind of confusion or have you thinking, oh, you can't use this for your projects, regardless of what type of projects they are. So what we're going to show you is drilling information, but you can generate this type of report for any of your projects. So what I wanted to show you first of all is we talked about snapshots. So we've got a racetrack diagram at the bottom here. Now, this is a comparison of the same file for two different snapshot periods. So it's very handy to be able to say, okay, what did it look like in October, for example, versus what did it look like in November, and backtrack or go forward depending how many snapshots you've got and what time intervals you want to compare. Now, in these particular reports, if I hover over any of these roll-ups, and these are roll-ups, they're from a number of different activities, so they're rolled up by phase. So I can hover over that and I can see where my start and finish is and what phase that is, even in the Gantt chart. Now, if I wanted to create a new snapshot, let's go look at this file in P6. Now, we quite commonly get the question, well, how difficult is it to do snapshots? Number one, Nicole did mention already, snapshots can be automated. But what if I've just made a bunch of changes to my schedule and I want to make sure that I grab that into a snapshot? I can create manual snapshots as well. So that's what we'll do here. First of all, we'll have a look at this file. And I've just been told I need to make a change to an activity. Now, the activity I need to change is 04 to 10. They're telling me that this particular activity is going to take a month longer than we anticipated. So I'm just going to set this end date a month farther out. And of course, then in the P6 side, I need to schedule it. So I'm just going to click schedule. Now you'll notice this actually is the roll-up group that we're going to look at. You'll notice the end date in here, because of the extension of that activity, moved to the 30th of December from the 2nd. So now if we want to grab that information, it's going to grab everything that that normally goes into a snapshot, including our change here. So what I'm going to do is just go back to the Projects tab. Now, if I want to create a snapshot, this particular file has had snapshots taken before because that was what was generating the report we looked at a few moments ago. If I need to create a new one, it's very easy. All I do is, first of all, tell P6-Reporter what snapshot am I taking, so it knows where to put the information. So I'm going to make one for December. And the other thing I need to do is just go in and ask it to run it. So I just click go. And it takes a couple of minutes. It's not usually a really lengthy process. And you'll see when it's finished, you'll see that this snapshot run part will say pass, and then we'll get a message under the run message. Now, if for some reason you created a snapshot and there was anything the software needed to let you know about, it would be in this run message, but most often it says run complete, that kind of a message in there. So just to let you know it's finished. Now, once we've got the information in the snapshot, we'll go and have a look at how easy it is to reload into that particular report we were looking at, so that you can see just how easy both sides of this are, because it's not a difficult process to create snapshots, and it's not a difficult process to refresh your reports either. So I'm just going to refresh it again. It should be getting pretty close to being complete.
Yeah, now the snapshot will take longer if you have a very, very big project. These are not very big projects, so they should be pretty quick. And it will also depend on what data you're taking. So we have controls over the level of data. So if your team is only using activities and you don't use resources, you don't use costs, you don't have to take the spreads, for example. If you don't use expenses, for example, you don't have to take expenses. If you don't use steps, you don't have to take steps. So we do have controls over the layers of detail. And we've overhauled the pricing. So our pricing we changed it because some people felt that it was too expensive because they only used activities, for example. They didn't use resources, they didn't use costs. So some of the things that we were doing, they didn't feel they needed. So we rearranged our different packages to try and make it more cost effective if they're not using all the layers of P6. Okay.
So now we've got sorry, Nicole, didn't mean to cut you off.
Good, I'm good.
So now we've got our snapshot. That's just telling us that part of it is finished. So I can just go out of P6. And now what I want to do, I can just refresh this particular piece here, but I'm going to go in, and you can change these around if you prefer to look at them in a slightly different order, that kind of thing. So I could change top or bottom. So here I've got the December one, could put December here. And you'll notice if I go to the group that I made the change in, and that's this surface land piping group that we were looking at, and there's your 30th of December date. So we just made one small change, and you can see it in that particular scenario. Now, as I said, if I wanted to perhaps put the latest one on the bottom and go back a couple of months, I can do that as well. And you can see how easy that is to change. So whatever comparisons you're looking at doing, you've got the availability to definitely do that. Now, we have a number of other reports, and I'm going to kind of jump from the bottom and start at the top here, because we'll just show you some of the management dashboards that are available. And again, food for thought, the type of projects that you are dealing with, just keep in mind what kind of information would be very handy to have in the dashboards. So for these ones, I've got a management dashboard. It tells you upcoming, and we've got budget hours status by team project. We've got number of late and early and budget status. Are they on budget, under, or over? I've got over allocated resource totals, but I've also got milestones. Now, I don't know how many of you have had to deal with milestone tracking. Everybody to an extent, I'm sure, but depending on the project that you're assigned to, quite often milestone tracking is a big thing that has to be looked after for reporting purposes. Now, I'm not suggesting you wouldn't look after is the milestone being met or not, but the actual reporting piece of it, if you don't have a very streamlined process to get that information out, that can become a very, very labor intensive process to do. So we've got milestones across here. We've got for the well, similar types of information, a little bit different here. So there's hours allocated for your drilling crew, surface land start, ready to license, some milestones they wanted to track, and you've got the Gantt chart showing up here. Now you've got for roads, similar type of information, and pipeline. Now that's because, of course, this is drilling information. But you could have in a manufacturing scenario, maybe you've got different areas of manufacturing or different types of manufacturing, depending on what you need to roll things up by. So just keep in mind that this type of reporting fits any project. Now, if I go to the portfolio, now there is sitting behind these examples, there's a portfolio of drilling projects. So in this particular one, you'll notice that we've got filters across the top here. Now, I'm just going to squeeze that down, give you a little better view of that report. You've got filters, so I can choose what report date do I want to look at. In other words, what snapshot. Now, because of the filtering, the code structure that's in these files, I can filter by fiscal year, by project manager, team, project type, that kind of scenario. So just some food for thought as to what reports are you looking to have at your fingertips on all your projects. So again, we've got upcoming projects, and then we've got this middle panel here. Sorry, below on the left side before I carry across to the middle, over allocated resource total hours. So you've got a resource panel here. This middle section here, you'll notice it's got color coding on it. Well, that color coding actually is giving you some very valuable information because it's color coded, and you'll notice that total cost under or over is what it's tracking. You've got total cost percentage over, and you've got color coding that draws your eye very quickly, because don't forget, we've got a big list of projects here. So you know very, very quickly which items do I need to go and have a little bit of a closer look at, perhaps. Now, one of the ones in this particular portfolio that we do track a little closer, and that is because this particular facility 2B. Now, you'll notice that when I go in and click on facility 2B, it's giving me the information for facility 2B. So it shows you where it's showing up on the late and early. It's showing you where it shows up on the budget status, who is the PM, labor hours by drilling team. So where does it fall in there? And budget hour status by team and project. So again, it's showing you where, sorry, I clicked on down a little bit lower, but any of these that you click on, it's going to show you where in these other graphs that particular one shows up. Now, we can also sort in this middle panel on any column that you need. So for example, if I was looking to see it sorted by percent complete for these projects in that portfolio, I can click on the column header. And you'll notice I've got all the 100%, and then we go down and you can see exactly what it's done for us here. So any of these columns, so if I'm looking for anything that has some cost issues, you can group them all together. So depending on what you're looking for, you can see it's very interactive. It's very, very easy to use. Now, if I go to the right a little bit here, we did briefly look at these, but just giving you a little bit closer look as to what's in the late and early. So we've got late, on time, early. So it's telling us how many projects in this portfolio fall into each category. So it gives you a high level, how many projects do I really need to go and have a quick look at, because they're showing that there is something not correct. They're not trending the way they should. Now, budget status, again, it's showing you what's going on here. Projects by PM. Now, you could have projects by location if that works better for the projects that you're dealing with, those types of scenarios. For these particular projects, we've got labor hours by drilling teams. So there is teams involved here. And budget hour status by team and project. So again, you can see on budget, over budget, under budget. So it gives you a lot of very, very valuable information here at your fingertips. Very, very easy to focus on what it is you need to focus on. So if I go back to our reports, this is the portfolio level. So it's rolling up all the projects in our portfolio. But what happens if I want to look at a project? We've got that covered as well. So if we look at the project, we've got the overview first of all. So this is a self-serve dashboard that you can pick the project. So I can go and click on any project that I've got snapshots available for. And I can also look at the snapshot for that project, depending on which snapshot you want to show. So you can filter it that way to focus on exactly what you're looking for. But at the project level, I've got some overall information here. So I've got the project, I've got dates, PM, stage, region, and team. Now, percent complete, it's got some information here as far as labor hours, duration, that kind of scenario. And we also have CPI, SPI trending. This particular one has no progress in it. So we do have, I'll just have a look at this list here on this side, then I'll show you one that's got some progress in it. So we've got the name of activities in that project, percent complete, percent over, cost over, under, similar information that you had rolled up at the portfolio level, you've got now available for a single project. So it's activity by activity with your totals along the bottom. Now, if I wanted to just have a quick look at one that has some progress in it, just so you can see how that is going to look. So now I've got a project that has progress. You can see CPI, SPI trending is here. I've got roll-ups for the costs, so you can see where they are. If I hover, it says baseline amount and at completion amounts, that kind of scenario. Now, same thing, we've got color coding in the columns for the activities to the right. And again, you can sort on any of the columns depending on what information you want to focus on. So this is very, very easy to use as well. Now, if I wanted to look at what's happening on this particular project, and again, if I wanted to compare, okay, what did November look like? What does December look like? Just click on the snapshot and it's going to show you the information for whatever snapshot you select. Now we have another project level report here that I find really, really interesting, really helpful. Not that these others aren't, but some of them tend to lend themselves a little more to what I deal with quite often than others. So, critical report. This particular one, you've got different pieces of information, and just bear with me a second. I'm going to start out by going back to the file we were on before. I just need to go 15. So we'll start with this one, but you can see with the facility 2B, it was going to show you a little different look to the scenario. But if I look at this information, it's showing you critical path information. Now, this is something that is available in P6, but to show it in this type of scenario, it's labor intensive. So to be able to take a snapshot and have all this information in a self-serve dashboard at your fingertips makes it so easy to use. You've got current information for that snapshot. You can just click and change. So it's very valuable information. So criticality level here, we've got all of them selected, but you can deselect and focus on a specific one. I've got percentages for criticality, and here it shows critical, near critical, not critical. I've got the activities, and it tells you, are they critical, near critical, or not critical? And again, you can sort on the columns. So if it's easier to look at the information that way, that definitely is available to you as well. Now you also have the activities in the Gantt chart across the bottom. Now the color coding here is showing you the criticality level. So these orange ones are near critical. The green, of course, is not critical, not yet anyways. So that's another way that you can look at the information. Very easy to see, what do I need to focus on? Now, when we go in and have a look at resourcing, now, especially when you're dealing with a portfolio, looking at resourcing and really visiting what are your different options when you have a resource overload, things like that, is something that can be a little intimidating when you first have to do it. This self-serve dashboard is going to help you with that, because I've got resource information for our portfolio. In other words, we're back to our projects. And when we look at this, we've got overallocated hours. Then I've got resources here. Now I can choose what resource I want to have a look at. So I'll leave it on pipeline crew for the time being here. Now I've got this particular pipeline crew resource profile. These are the projects that are involved in generating this particular resource profile. And here are the activities in the bottom right that all this information is generating from. Now, I realize that's pretty easy to digest information, but there is something else to be aware of here. If I want to see, for example, I'll go back to my facility 2B file. That one I have to track quite a bit. There's been a few things happen on that project I want to make sure I keep an eye on. So in this resource profile, where does facility 2B actually sit? I can just click on it. That's where it sits in the pipeline crew resource. So that's something that is fairly handy to just have at your fingertips. Now also, if I want to get everything back, just click on it again. It all comes back to your screen. Now, if I was looking at a scenario where you're doing some future planning, now maybe facility 2B is a project I've got in my portfolio that is the most important. But then I want to check out and see, okay, obviously I've got overloads, but the projects that are the highest priority, am I going to get under that overload area with them? Or do I need to really, really, really look at moving around some projects, which you maybe can, maybe can't. But to see where some of these projects end up, if I go and say, okay, I'm going to deal with this one and this one and this one, where does that put me in my profile? Now, maybe I want the next one down here. Okay, if I add that project for my pipeline crew, which I've got an overload, I'm pretty much to the max. So you can do some what if right on this particular dashboard and get some pretty interesting information back from it. Now you'll notice as I was clicking on the projects here, it was adjusting what you were seeing in the bottom right because it is going to show you what's being shown in the profile and in the bottom left here. So some very interesting information in that particular one. And again, if somebody's looking at this, they do not have to know P6. They don't have to go into P6 and open the entire portfolio of projects and look at resource profiles with them all open on your desktop, that kind of thing. All that information, and it can be a lot of information, is nicely and neatly rolled up to this self-serve dashboard. Now, we did speak a little bit earlier about milestone trending. Now, this is one where we've got a couple other ways to look at milestones here. I'll go to milestone trending first. And again, please keep in mind, this is food for thought. So how do you want to look at your information? What's the easiest way to slice and dice it to be most effective for the type of projects that you deal with? So I'm looking at my report date. I can change the snapshot date. I've got filtering along here. Now, in these projects, the milestones have codes on them. So we have what we refer to as a type of a milestone. Now, again, these are drilling milestone types, but I've dealt with turnaround milestones that have names are different, but you still have a number of different turnaround milestones. So each type of project would have different codes on the milestones, but you're usually still looking at grouping them together and reporting on them. So if I look at this particular one, you can see as I move my mouse pointer over this particular graph, you've got your legend here and it's giving you details as you go across. So depending on what you're looking at, you can get more information hovering over whichever time frame you're looking to see. Now you also have your list of projects at the right side here with status on it. Now, if that's not exactly the way that you want to look at your milestone trending, we have a side-by-side one as well. This, again, makes for easy comparison. So if I'm looking, for example, at the one that is selected now, final tie-in complete, that's the milestone type. I've got the snapshot for October and the snapshot for November. So it's very easy to see what's changed. So you can, again, the graphs work the same way, so you can go and line up over some of these particular ones, and wherever you click on these, you'll get different pieces of information. So depending where you click, it's trying to show you where it is in the other one, in case you're wondering what I did there. So you've got some side-by-side comparison that can be very handy to have as well. So one more before we go, and my apologies, I realize I'm probably talking too much here. I can see the time clicking away. So in the Gantt chart here, this is another way of viewing resources. So I've got the resources down the side here. You'll notice pipeline crew is selected. I can, again, filter for the snapshot or any of these elements that are in the filter boxes here. Now, if I wanted to look at a couple more items here, all you have to do is click on them. Maybe I want to look at accounting. And you'll notice if I move this over a bit, if I take the accounting off and I put it on, it's making the adjustment here. So you can use whatever combinations you need, or I can go in and select all, depending on what you're trying to focus on. So you've got a very interactive diagram there that shows you where these different elements are, what your time frame is, and of course the color coding is giving you some work type information as well. And the color coding, again, this is coming from the contents of the project. So yours might be labeled different, but it still could give you very valuable information. So what I'd like to do now is show you some reports that we've got in Tableau. So this is Power BI. So I'm just going to go back down here and let's look at Tableau. Gives you very similar information in a few cases, but a different look to it, slightly different than what we were looking at. So again, you've got the first one here is my portfolio summary. So this is a number of projects. Again, the information all combined together, nice and handy for us, and we can filter on whatever filter options that we need to use across the top. Again, you've got the color coding. You've also got some other coding here that you didn't see in the Power BI one. You'll notice that you've got little icons here. So for example, you can see at a glance what is happening with that particular element. So previous was 60,000 on the one I'm hovered over. Current is 64,920. So it went up by 4,920. So what you can see by these particular icons, you know right away what's trended up from last time. Now I've got one that points down here and you can see previous 60,000, current. So it's gone down, this particular one. So these little icons, again, very handy to keep track of what's going on and be able to tell at a glance, because you're looking at the status of a large number of projects. So you want to be able to pinpoint as quickly as possible, where are the issues that I need to have a look at? Because of course, if it takes a couple of days to pull the information together and realize that your portfolio has a couple of projects that are in really bad straits, by then you've done a lot more damage than if you've got that information at your fingertips. Damage has been done while you've kind of put together all the reporting to confirm that there actually is a problem. So this way you've got everything at your fingertips. So if I look at project detail, again, this is very similar to what we were looking at in Power BI, but this one has a very interesting graph here. So we've got resource allocation, and it's giving you a percentage here. And you can see in the bottom here that I've got some areas that, yeah, I'm going to have a look at here, because in this May timeframe, what this is telling me is that I'm at 247% of my limit I have available for a pipeline crew. Well, I know that's not going to fly. I need to do something about it, or I'm going to have a major problem. So this is how you can very, very easily kind of focus in on those particular pieces. Now, I've got some other information here. You'll notice the one beside it. It says 57% of the limit. And this particular project is 17%. So it shows you what the allocation according to what you've got in your resource dictionary. So you need to make sure that you've got your limits up to date in your resource dictionary. Now you've got some Gantt chart information here. Facilities, pipeline reviews and approvals. What are you looking at here? You've got costs. It's showing you where you're at. And you've got your activities. So some of it very similar to what you saw in Power BI, but this particular resource allocation graph was not in the Power BI piece. So we've got resource allocations in Tableau as well, but there is a couple of them I want to be able to show you as well before we run too close to the time limit here. if I go over, you've got milestone trending in here as well, but valve green ups, we've got green up reports. Now, depending on the project that you're dealing with, these particular ones were done off of a turnaround schedule. But I've used these particular reports on the manufacturing side as well. Now, this looks fairly not too scary because there's not a lot of lines in here. But keep in mind, what's generating each one of these lines can be a few thousand activities. In this case, a little less than that, but depending on what you're actually reporting on for green up reports, you can be rolling up thousands of activities so that it's giving you a very concise picture of exactly what's going on. So we've got relief valve summary here. So we've got the service, we've got valve removed, valve in the shop, valve reinstalled. We've got control valve summary, same type of progress. Now, one of the things I find very handy with this as well is not only does it give you a status that's easy to digest, you don't have to be a scheduler to realize what it's telling you, but also it makes it extremely easy to see, where is there something off track here? Do I need to go and have a look? Have some updates been missed, or did something get status that actually isn't done, like something that's questionable? So if I go down to control valve here, here's one example. I've got install valve is 100%, and the elements in front of it have not been statused. Now, it may be a case where these are actually there's a reason that they were removed from scope or something, and somebody just didn't edit that. But you can tell at a glance very easily if something's out of sync, is what I usually term it as. So I've got exchanger and piping green ups, same type of scenario. So this is giving you roll up status for the exchanger data and the piping. And again, just keep in mind, that doesn't have to be exchangers and piping. It can be manufacturing. It can be a number of different elements depending on what you've got in your project. But it'll take a large amount potentially, if that's what you need to roll together, and give you a very easily digested overall picture of what's going on. Now, one of the ones that I see quite often, inspection summaries. Now, inspections, along with everything else, inspections are something that, of course, has to be looked after. It has to be, you have to know when they're going to be done. They need to be done when they're supposed to be done, or your timeline in your project starts to really fall apart. So here again, inspections, here's all my inspection services and what's actually happening with these inspection types. So there's different ways of rolling the information together, but the idea is to get your team a bird's eye view of the status of what's actually the current status in your project. So now a couple more that I want to show you just before I turn it back over to Nicole. You've got a racetrack, and this is in Tableau, a racetrack by discipline. So you've got time frames here and you've got systems. So what work is going on for each system, for each discipline? So you can tell very easily, if I go to a time frame, okay, what have I got going on in that particular time frame? Now, I've got a racetrack by function as well. So again, by system and discipline, and here is your color coding. And you can tell at any point, what work have you got going on? Now, that kind of information I see quite often generated out of Excel by exporting spreadsheets, and then somebody writes it up so that they can have a macro, generate an Excel graph, and then it's put on a project room, boardroom wall, that kind of thing. You don't necessarily have to do that anymore. You can have it all generated off your snapshots, set it up once, have it generated. You've got a self-serve dashboard sitting in front of you, and all you have to do is make sure that you select the snapshot that you want to look at, and it's going to give you the information. So on that note, I hope that having a look at some of these reports has given you some food for thought on how you can streamline your reporting. And I always say communication too, because the reporting is part of your communication on projects. So hopefully it's given you some food for thought as to what could apply to your particular projects. So on that note, I will turn it back over to Nicole.
Marilyn, just before you do that, I think the P6QA ones are in Power BI, right, James? Maybe you could show those just for a second, because they are newer ones that we've added.
Okay, just bear with me. Sorry, I
James,
clicked a little too soon here.
Okay.
So I just need to go share it again, and just bear with me.
Okay.
They're in Power BI.
Yeah, okay. I think so, James can point you in the right direction. And while you're doing that, I'll tackle the questions. So where's the database is the first question that's been put in the question room. So the database can be internal. It could be up in our cloud. So you can put it wherever makes sense, depending on your particulars, okay? If your P6 is in the Oracle Cloud, then most likely we would host it in our environment. That would be probably the way to do it, but it doesn't have to be. Okay. Can we modify existing reports? Can we create new reports? Yes, yes. So the reporter component is really the guts, the engine in the background. Displaying it in Power BI or Tableau, we can help you because we've got a lot of these sort of dashboards already prepared, but then your team, of course, can do more. You can put your own filters, you can create new reports. So yes, after that, you have the flexibility to do what you need to. Okay, so that's answered. Apply to everyone. I'm trying to. Okay. Not sure if everyone got to see that. Post. I'm not sure if it's working, but anyway, I answered it verbally. Okay, anyone else with questions before Marilyn goes back and shows the QA? Was she able to see them, or did I throw a monkey wrench in it?
It doesn't look like I've got them in the list here. Oh, and the link you sent me, James, it's not letting me in.
Okay, so we'll show it in our next webinar. And it's just some new ones that we've added, and that's they work on top of our P6QA tool. So I think we're going to show that next week. So if anyone's interested, you'll see those dashboards in that one. So, okay, I'll take it back, Marilyn. All right, and again, if there are any questions, just go ahead and put them in the question room. We'll keep tackling them as we go. All righty. Okay, so let me wrap up. So hopefully you had a chance to see something that's of interest. Hopefully you understood the ideas of what we're trying to achieve here by having this. So really the benefits that we've seen with our clients is it's much more efficient and accurate. Yes, you can do it with back-end databases. Yes, you can do reporting with XERs, XMLs. Yes, you can do reporting by pulling data out into Excel and putting it into Power BI. Yes, you can do all those things, but this streamlines it all. It's not seamless. It's not no intervention, but it's pretty darn close, which makes it much more repeatable and much more accurate, which also makes it more accessible because the users use the tool that they're used to, and they know and they can rely on the data being there in a nice, clean way. There's no mucking about with Excel, etc. So those are important pieces. And then the visibility. Okay. So with the snapshotting, this brings a whole different dynamic. So you can really truly see month over month reports with variances, with different color coding, etc., that you have available up in those tools. And you can really give your team a much better look and feel for the historic data. You don't have to take so many baselines like we have right now. You know, the only real way to do this is to either throw all the data out into Excel every time or to do baselines. So this moves the process away from that and makes it much easier to manage in the P6. And as I mentioned, the accuracy. Okay, so something that's not easy to recreate are the spreads. So if you do resources, if you use expenses, the time over time period data is not easy to deal with. So we've got that covered. The earned value is accurate. It matches what's in P6. And that data is not easy to get at, especially if you go after the backend tables. It's not readily available. Okay, so I think we can go back in to see if any questions are coming up. I'll stop recording here.